ever marveled at the incredible influence of Josh Talks, India's foremost regional content and upskilling organization, and wondered about the driving force behind it? You're in for a treat. Today, I had the privilege of speaking with Supriya Paul, the CEO and co founder of Josh Talks. The platform has over 2.5 billion lifetime views and an astonishing average of 270 plus million monthly views across all platforms. These numbers speak volumes about the impact she and her team have made on the youth of India. We discuss crucial topics that shape our society, insights from her entrepreneurial journey, and most importantly, her first experience of meditation. I was her co passenger in that journey, and she shared how she went in with the typical ideas on what a meditation retreat should be like, but left feeling changed and transformed. I have built memories with her for a lifetime that will be etched in our souls. This is a conversation that will leave you inspired, force you to introspect, and illuminate you. Listen in to the remarkable Supriya Paul and keep meditating. Welcome, Supriya, on Pragyaan. It's a pleasure having you. And, it's interesting. We're shooting at the Josh Talks office, as you can see the background, many awards. And the good news is that I've known Supriya for quite some time, which means I've had a front row seat to your growth, which I feel very special and privileged about. I've also seen you grow as an individual tremendously and constantly challenging yourself and pushing your limits. And I really sort of look up to that. And you inspire me constantly to also look at my own journey and also the leadership style that you have. And I've seen you being very determined and also turning storytelling into a profitable business, which I don't think many people really think about and are able to do. So tell me a little bit about why did you really start Josh Talks, and how do you still stay motivated after so many years?
Awesome. No, first, thank you so much for having me. I feel like every time I have a long conversation with you, it's very calming and relaxing. So I hope to have the same today. But the start of Josh happened in 2014. 15 is actually when we incorporated it as a company. But 14 was in my final year of college when I met Shobhit, who's my co-founder, and he was in his second year of college at that time. And the two of us met by coincidence at a friend's birthday party, which was very random. But throughout the evening, we kept talking about something which was extremely common amongst the two of us, which was this desire to give direction to the potential that young India has. And it came from the fact that we were both from extremely different backgrounds. Shobhit dropped out of school in class 8 to pursue sport full time. He ended up playing tennis at a state level, and then he went on to cycle for the Indian team. And was someone who left home very early on, lived a very, very different life, had very different kind of parenting growing up, as opposed to me, who came from a very traditional sort of conservative family with respect to careers, where I was the topper kid. Like, I was the biggest nerd in my class, in my school. The whole goal in life was to just top academically, and then life will figure itself out. But it was in college when I think I started to realize for the first time that the direction of the journey that I was on, which for 18 years was just making me focus on academic excellence, wasn't something that was going to give me the career of my choice, or wasn't something that was actually genuinely making me happy. I was studying to be a chartered accountant while doing BCom honors in Venki. We went to the same college. So, but I wasn't happy doing that. There were 250 people in my class, 230 were doing CA along with BCom. And nobody's mission was to become a chartered accountant. Nobody knew what lies at the end of cracking this exam and getting into that career. But everyone was still doing it because that's what we've been told. That's what a teacher told them, their friend told them, their father told them, like my father did in my case. But nobody was really questioning what outside of this, what does the world have to offer to me, and what can I actually genuinely make my career in. And that's sort of the belief of Josh, right? Which is that we all as young people have so much potential, and if there was a platform that could give direction to that potential, what would the outcome of our productive life be? And that's what we wanted to aspire to do with Josh. And that's sort of how we started and created a platform where people would come and simply share their story of how they went from point A to point B in a particular career. And the objective was to simply inspire the audience to get up, take charge of your life, and do something out of the ordinary.
Great. I mean, I think increasingly I have heard so many of my friends and so many of my cousins and family, even, I'm from Jaipur, where I go back and they often share with me how they've heard a Josh talk. And it's actually increasingly becoming a destination for young people in tier two, tier three cities when they're in this exploratory stage of what is it that they want to do, or very often just figuring out what is their calling or what is their passion or what is their interest. As you said, we realize and we take these decisions in our late 30s because the first time it's more about what did my father tell me or what did my parents tell me or what did my friends decide to do. Everyone was doing engineering, so I did engineering. And suddenly you find people in their 30s really saying, oh no, this is not what I like. I want to pivot now and actually become a singer or start a band or play a sport. And or I recently spoke with Ayush, who started Owl Media, right? And he went to bits, became an engineer, and now is running a marketing agency with no formal education in marketing at all, and he's one of the top agencies in the country. So I think it's great what you're doing, and I think also the fact that you're allowing this in regional languages makes it even more impactful. And tell me a little bit about some of the stories. I mean, you've heard lakhs of stories in your journey since 2015. What are the top two, three that have impacted you personally?
So I think, while I continue to watch talks and still appreciate them and learn from them, I think the stories that are closest to my heart are still the stories that I was a part of writing, or I was a part of putting on a stage before we had a team who actually now curates and works with different speakers. So I think the first story was of Sheetal Jain, and she was the first speaker that I actually, worked with on her talk. It was at a live event that happened in Mumbai. And it was for the first time in my life when I saw 400 people standing clapping for someone with tears in their eyes after listening to her story. So Sheetal is a daughter of a bar dancer. She grew up in Kamatipura, which is a red light district in Mumbai, and she was in a situation while growing up where her mom also used to be involved in sex work, and she would be servicing clients on the bed when Sheetal would be under the bed. So she lived with that day in and day out, and that's the memory of her childhood. But interestingly, as she was growing up, one of the biggest things that happens in Mumbai in terms of festivals is the Ganpati festival. And it recently concluded as well, so there was a lot of noise around that. But when the Ganpati festival used to happen, through the window, she would be able to hear the sound of the dhol. And it was something that she really resonated with, and it was something that became sort of like her purpose in life, that I want to be someone who's able to create that music. Eventually, she got involved with an NGO called Kranti, and she eventually got a 100% scholarship from the US Drum School. Fantastic. And is a teacher now. And I think, there was this line that she said in her talk, which I still remember, and I still get goosebumps every time that I think of it. Which was that ये आसमान हम सबका है, तो इस पे जो हक है वो भी हम सबका है. And what happens is that, in a world that progresses, people who come from privileged backgrounds, who come from tier 1 cities, they start controlling the narrative and careers, right, and progression. But it was that statement just, I think, is something that stays with me and is also the essence of Josh. Another story which is very, very different, but not extremely emotional or anything, but another story that I really loved working on or curating was that of Ankur Variku. And I think that's really, really special for me because I was able to develop such a strong bond with him as a result of that, which is extremely important to me. But Also, it was because I was a college student and I used to follow him on Quora, and he was a big writer on Quora at that time. And he had shared his email on one random thread on fitness on Quora. And that's how I reached out to him, and he said yes. And so for me, first, it was a shocker because he was the CEO of Groupon at that time. And I was like, listen, like CEOs say yes to college students who have no purpose in life or trying to figure out what to do with their time. But he said yes, and he was really courteous. He agreed to a scripting call, which is also, again, very, very different from, how normal people in that position respond. And he showed up to the event, and he was there throughout, and then we connected after the event, and he's been a close mentor to me in my journey since then. So I think, I really that's a story that's very close to me, because it showed how, if you really have the desire to do something, like how that Shah Rukh Khan line, I've forgotten what the line is. The कायनात line. But अगर आप किसी चीज़ को I think पूरी शिद्दत से करो तो पूरी कायनात उसको आपसे मिलाने में कोशिश करती है. So that really happened for me. Because I was just like, oh, let's write a random email to someone, and he connected, and then we built that rapport over years. So I think these two stories are extremely special and dear to me.
I loved the story of Sheetal because, of course, one is about endurance, resilience, how she converted her crisis into something that has been driving her purpose now. But the line that you shared also talks a lot about abundance. We always think that life and everything that we do is a zero-sum game, not realizing there's a much bigger picture, and there is a place for all of us to thrive, not just survive, but actually thrive. So I love that line. And I think one tip I want to ask you is, what is it? How did you reach out to Ankur that he responded? Because, now I'm sure a bunch of people reach out to you saying, Supriya, can you do this? Can you help us with this? What are some of the things that you look for in that email? Because a lot of the folks who will be listening to this are also youngsters who want that help.
Yeah.
And you obviously, one, were brave enough to ask, which I think is the first step, shoving all your ego aside and really making that, taking that step to ask. And second, what did you write that you felt really sort of made Ankur respond and help you and be there for you?
I think, what's happened in the world now is that everyone wants to get things done really quickly. And now, especially with respect to writing emails and getting responses, you have GPT, right? Even with now job interviews and how tasks are done, everything is done on GPT. So that connection is completely lost, because someone who values a good email can see through it when you've done that. So I think cold calling and cold emailing is something that I really, really worked on in my early 20s, because I didn't have an alternative. I didn't come from a background where there would be 10 people who would be standing there to support me on day one. So I had no option but to reach out to people and build that connect with them. And see if they would help me and support me in my journey. But I think some of the tips, or what I really do that works for me, is that one, I'm extremely honest with why I'm writing to someone. And most times, if not all, people connect with that honesty because it's missing in others' asks, right? You're not transparently telling them why are you asking for their time, why are you asking them to come, and all of that. And you're just, it seems like you have a hidden agenda and you're not being direct. The second is, I think I put in a lot of effort into articulating my thoughts well, where I also, through the email, I'm able to give a perspective on why this relationship will be two ways. So I'm not so this is not something where I'm going to lean on you and just suck the life out of you, but here is what I can offer you as well. And I think that's how relationships, like work relationships, work, right?
Yeah.
And that's
you can't
how
be extractive.
Bonds are formed. Like one of the examples that happened to me recently and last year was that I wrote to Chris Anderson, who is the founder, the head of TED. And I just wrote a simple email to him saying that, listen, I was really inspired by you. This is the talk that I saw in college. Your format changed my life. Here is what we did as a result of the format that you created. And this is what we've become. And today, everything is because of you. And I'm in New York and I'm there. And this was like 5 days before I was reaching. And I said that it's life is going to complete a full circle for me if I get a chance to just say thank you to you. And he responded. like within like a couple of hours he responded, he gave me a slot immediately. We went for breakfast and we had the best time.
Amazing.
And just talking about, like, because we share a format, so just how the world in the west and the east are different and what are people taking back. And I think, like, for people who are looking at building these relationships or connects and are using emails as a medium of writing, or even if you're doing cold calling in any form, I think you just have to be, one, authentic. Second, you have to be relatable. The third is, I think you have to be relevant. So the conversation should not digress from what you're asking the person to be. So don't write long essays. So be a little crisp and mindful of their time as well. And fourth, have a clear ask.
Yeah.
So, don't go in all directions and just say what you want as a conclusion, and then it makes it easier for people to reply to you.
Yeah, I mean, great story with Chris, right? I think he would have learned so much about what's happening in India and how are things playing out here. So I'm sure he would have really valued the insights you shared with him. I just want to come back to the Sheetal story and want to understand, what is the Supriya story? What makes you who you are today? Because I think what we go through in our formative years define a lot of who we are and what we do and what our motivations are. So tell me a little bit, go back and tell me a little bit about what growing up was like for you at home, school, college, all of that.
Yeah, I think the person I am today is not the person who I was even a couple of years back. Forget school or college, but even till a couple of years ago. And I feel that transformation in who I am, what my identity is, who I want to be, has happened in the last couple of years with Josh. But when I was in school, so I was, like I mentioned earlier, I was extremely academically bound. And my objective in life was that this is the one direction that has been set for me. And here is how I can make my parents proud. That typical feeling that any middle class child has, ki, I want to make my parents really proud of who I am, and whatever they want me to do, I'll do it. It doesn't matter what my dreams are, but I'll give it up because this is what's important to them. And what that did to me in school was that I had a very, very small group of friends. I wasn't someone who was extremely social at the time. I was an extreme introvert. I was very closeted with my emotions, thoughts, feelings, everything. And most of my time went in just studying. It was only in college when I also saw a different side of me, because I had no option but to get out of my shell and make friends, because I was hating my entire experience. And for the first time, I really went out of my comfort zone to even talk to people, because I was like, how am I going to survive this if I don't have others who I know, who I can speak to? And I think what's really shaped me has been the role that my parents have played in my life. My father has had a very, very deep impact on who I am. And at first, it was like this whole battle of, can I make peace with the fact that he was so, determined with respect to my career and the pressure and the intensity that came with it. But second, now when I look at others, I feel like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be who I am. So, just the, like, having a routine, discipline, ensuring that you're prim and proper, you're doing things a certain way, you're studying, you're reading, you're, like, learning about the world, you're traveling. So I think that kind of exposure that I got, I'm extremely grateful for, and it shaped me into who I am. But intense. My childhood was very intense, with a lot of external pressure, but self-implicit pressure was off the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that in the standards you set for yourself, right? I think you're constantly pushing yourself. You just have this incredible ability to just focus in and stay focused towards your goal and achieve that goal at any cost. And I agree with you that when we are growing up, we often feel like what's happening at home is the weirdest shit that's going down. And we find our own coping mechanisms. And I think yours was maybe just be so good at academics and be so good in school that nobody even tries to ask you what your personal life looks like, because it's an area which you feel is all really messed up and you don't want to talk about it with anyone, because there's so much judgment that might happen, or you feel like people will look at you differently and you just want it to be perfect. And as I've grown, I've realized that I'm much more comfortable with who I am, and I talk about the crazies that I felt was weird, was actually normal.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just made me want to understand and be more open about the crazies that other people are going through, because it's fine and there's a lot more acceptance. Um, do you feel like you're far more comfortable in your own skin today? And what have you done to make that journey for yourself?
So definitely yes. I think I'm not 100% there, but from from like 2 to 3 years ago when I was really obsessed with how the world saw me, and was still, maybe like the goal was different and it wasn't academics, but the goal also while building Josh was to be perceived a certain way. And I think by definition the goal was to be perceived as the best leader, right? And you have this visual description of a leader, and then you have these character attributes that you give to a leader, and the goal was that just become the best version of yourself, and copy the world, copy what's worked for people across the globe who've been deemed to be the best, and just become iconic like them. But I think over a period of time, I realized that the identity that we create for ourselves, which is not true to who we genuinely are, is very difficult to keep up with. And it takes you through a period of extreme highs and lows, because it's very tough. Like, to keep feeling yourself is very, very hard, right? Like, the day that you've not lived up to the expectation of that identity is something that you can't take away from yourself. So it was only like in the last 1 to 2 years where I genuinely thought of, what am I doing? Why am I trying to push myself this hard when I'm not on a clock? And like, I did not start Josh to build it in a certain number of years, to sell it in a certain number of years, to grow it in a certain number of years. Then why am I trying to keep up with this identity with a time frame and make it more intense? And what if I am myself? Can I be that person but be equally intense at work, be equally comfortable? And that's when I started focusing a lot on, okay, like what's my real identity? Like, who am I? As opposed to who I want to emulate and who I want to be. And that's when I think a lot of things started changing for me personally.
And this identity that you've created or had created for yourself, one, I want to know who are these people who you
Yeah.
think are iconic,
Yeah.
and then I want to, who are these people who you think are iconic?
So they're different, and I'm still inspired by a lot of them, and I still continue to take the best traits out of everyone, right? But for example, like a lot of the women role models that I have had or I have seen, like I was obsessed with Indra Nooyi, like unhealthy level of obsession, where I'm watching like every video, every content piece going out, just trying to see, how does she command herself on stage? How does she talk? What are the things that are working for her, not working for her? And over a period of time, it's just happened with different people who I've interacted with, who I've enjoyed speaking to, and seen, okay, like this is what a good leader should be, right? That's sort of like books also command how, like information that you consume kind of,
Influence.
influences what, what you want to become.
But can I just push you on that and really ask you if you were to say like one thing that really appealed to you from, let's say, Indra Nooyi,
yeah.
but just some specifics that sort of really stood out for you, which you then translated into your behavioral attributes? Because, we all know what is right, but to be able to do it is where the gap is. The people who actually convert from knowing to doing are the ones who become good leaders like
Yeah.
yourself. So just help me understand that a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things that she says again and again, Pragya, which has really stayed with me, is that as women, you are going to be in a room where you are going to be questioned. Okay, irrespective of what you say and what you do and how the world is today, you will be in a situation where that happens. There will be boardrooms where there will be more men than you, and that's how the world works today, right? But at that time, you have to become the hardest working person in that room.
Yeah.
And nobody should be able to compete with you on your hard work. Like, there's this one thing which she said, I think it was in one of the forums, which was that if I had seen a particular document, nobody ever had to review it, because the standards that were said is that if Indra's sign is on it, that's it. Like, no CEO, nobody else above her needs to ever look at a document that's done by her. And that became like a huge part of my first few years of building Josh, where I was obsessed with working hard. I still am, but where I was just like, nobody can beat me at anything. Like you bring a challenge on, if I don't know it, I'll learn it. YouTube is there. And I would just like never, I would not want to hire for it. I would not want to delegate. I'll just be like, throw a problem at me, I'll do it. But that's also what information you take and how you start working on it, right? But over a period of time, of course, I'm dissecting the learning, seeing how I can adapt to them, what best fits my work environment, and then putting them to use.
What you said about setting really high standards for yourself and constantly trying to hit that goal. Do you think that's one of the reasons why, you've spoken about the anxiety issue that you have? Does it really come from there? And what are you doing to really sort of tackle that? What has been really the downsides of anxiety that you have faced? Because I know different people in different stages of their lives go through it. I've been through it myself, and it's a tough place to be. So I'd love to know, what is it that you do now to manage?
Yeah. So I think the anxiety kicks from or stems from performance, right? So I have performance related anxiety, that if I have set a goal for myself that I am not being able to fulfill in the period of time, which is the pressure I have only put on myself because nobody else needs it in that duration. And if it's not met, then the anxiety kicks in. And it's wild. Like, my relationship with anxiety is wild. I don't know how it works for the rest of the world, but I haven't been the best person to be able to cope with it. It also leads to a lot of overthinking. It also leads to a lot of self-doubt. And then it's just a spiral that keeps on going on and on and on. And the intensity increases over a period of time. But now what I'm trying to do is just process it a lot more, where I'm saying that, okay, like, what is the stem or the origin of that anxiety? If it's a goal, was it a goal that was, unachievable to set in the first place? Was I wrong to be able to do that? If it's a duration related task or something like that, then okay, if this was done separately, independently over a longer period of time, would it still work? So I'm trying to process it. And at that time, I think, like, some of the things that are working for me are just being able to write my thoughts, paper write, not type. Yeah. And I think second is just giving personal space to me. Like, I am someone who had been in a routine where I would not give myself any time to breathe, because I just liked the act of being busy, even if it was not contributing to something, but just being busy is my personality. Let's be busy. But now just ensuring that I have some time where I can just, like, have coffee, chill, be with myself, walk, all of that just started helping a lot more. Yeah. And this, and I cry. Like, I think the best way to get rid of anxiety is just to keep crying. But just take everything out and hope that it'll go away. But yeah, jokes apart, like, I think those are the other two things that have really helped.
And are you much more aware now when you start to go down that spiral, because it's happened to you? And what do you really do to reel yourself back on to feeling much more at peace? Like, are there some tricks and tips that you've sort of figured out that work for you beyond the, of course, the crying and the talking and recalibrating that, what is the root analysis of the anxiety in the first place? But, like, are there some small tips that have worked for you?
So, I think, the time that it takes for me to get rid of this feeling is decently long. So I don't think there's any quick way of dealing with it, to be honest. But over a period of time, I think I've understood what brings me anxiety, and I try to solve for it in advance. So if I know that this is something that's going to bother me, then either it's already delegated to someone else who I know will not be bothered by the same thing, or, like, I've worked around it. For example, like, I find it very difficult to have confrontational conversations, and that gives me anxiety, a lot of anxiety, especially because I'm someone who's known to be empathetic and, known to be someone who's like a certain way with people. And then when I have to be a different version of me, I just feel like, okay, why am I doing this to myself and to that other person and everything? But now if I know that I need to have a hard conversation, I just prepare for it timely. I don't leave it till the last minute where I know that it's going to get on my nerves. I process it beforehand. I write about why it makes sense. I be objective about it, and then I'm able to carry through with it.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I also want to share with you that, I've also been reading a little bit about anxiety and why does it happen to people. And a lot of the writing around it has been that it's actually a symptom of something much deeper. Now, I want to come back to how you've built a team and the culture at Josh.
Yeah.
But before that, since we're on the anxiety conversation, I know you tried something new recently, which is
You made me try something new recently, is the real thing.
Oh, well, that's interesting, right? The way you put it, I did, but I'm really curious. So just for everyone, we decided I was going to this meditation retreat. As you all know, I follow heartfulness meditation, and we were going to Kanha Shantivanam, which is the world headquarters of heartfulness, and it's a beautiful place and a must visit. And I just texted Supriya because I've been requesting her to come along with me for some time, and she was very kind to say, yes, I want to give it a go. I want to try it. So we were there, and I want to talk through a little bit of that because there are many people who want to try meditation and one don't know how, or have these misnomers around meditation, which have been something which has been ailing them in some way. So I want to use this conversation with you to maybe bust some of that. But before that, why did you say yes?
So the real answer is even I don't know, because I was in this moment where I was going through a lot internally. And that was around the time of my birthday. I think this was like a couple of days after my birthday, and I was turning 30. I turned 30 this year. And that, I don't know what age does, but like that milestone of hitting a certain number just makes you think about the decade. That, what have I achieved in the last decade? Like dissecting every single decision. If I hadn't done this, what would my life be? If I had done this, where would I be? And I was going through a lot. Like it was intense. The waking up with that feeling of, questioning every single thing that I had done leading up to today. And at that time I was just like, wow, if I could just get away, if I could just, remove myself from these emotions that I'm feeling now and just be in a place where I could be alone, or where I could be at peace with who I am. And coincidentally, you messaged me at the same time. So I was just like, okay, for the first time, let me just do this. This is completely out of my comfort zone. I would never say yes to something like that, but let's scrap everything and go.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I'm so glad I was like a co-passenger on
Yeah.
that journey with you. You said yes, and we decided, because if you want to go to Kanha and you want to be there, the requisite is that we do 3 sessions of meditation before that, and you like made time for it. So I just loved how you planned for it and made sure you were 100% present and available for those 4 days, 5 days that we were there. But tell me, what were some of the myths and some of the ideas that you carried about meditation, which when you took this trip were like completely different?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I thought of, and maybe I'll not think, maybe it's not about meditation, but specifically about Kanha or a retreat or an area where you go to meditate. I thought that it's going to be a place where it's the only thing that you do, where there are long hours of silence and meditation, and you live a certain life, and like you're not supposed to talk loudly, and like it's just connect with yourself, do these 100 activities to just keep looking inward. And when we reached Kanha, because it was Bhandara, and there were 30,000 people, and I was like, wow, this is like literally my first impression was, this is a Kumbh Mela. I'm going to get lost, and I don't know how I'm going to find my soul over here, because I don't think I'll find myself. But
And
then,
find me
yeah,
in that.
it was insane. But I think when the first meditation happened that evening, right, where it was so organized and everyone was sitting in that one hall in the sub satellite areas, and I think that silence, although for me it was very difficult to maintain and close my eyes for that period of 30 minutes also, but there was something about everyone coming together that really made me think that, okay, this is a different experience, and let's not judge it for the number of people that are here, but let's see what's the best that I can take back for myself, and let's use it as an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, so I always say, you must visit Kanha to nourish your soul. So Supriya
And
did
food.
that. But I think what I'm hearing you say, I don't want to trivialize it. I think what I'm hearing you say is that in all that external noise, you still were able to connect with yourself and really use the time to find yourself in some ways. I think we're all on that journey. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I don't think I even told you this, that on my way back, I was in the Hyderabad airport. I ended up reaching early, and then I was in the lounge, and I was sitting there and crying for 45 minutes. I don't know why. And then I actually Googled it, and there were responses to say that, okay, if you go through an experience like this is something which is common. A lot of people who've experienced meditation for the first time, or coming together with so many people for the first time in connecting with yourself, you do feel abundance in emotions. But it was like I'd gone through something for a couple of days, and I cried at the airport, and then I was on my flight, and there was this feeling, and then even when I came back home, it was this feeling that was there for 2 to 3 hours, and then I just felt a lot more relieved at the end of it. The next day I felt lighter.
Incredible. I don't know why you didn't share this with me.
Yeah.
This is special. And
I don't know, I think I forgot.
yeah, that's okay. But you're right. It does happen. It's happened to me several times. It's part of the cleaning process as well. Because, like in meditation, I know you struggle to keep your eyes closed, and we'll get to that as well. But a lot of times, when you do spend that time with yourself, it's the first time you're giving your inner voice or your consciousness the attention it needs. And so, a lot of what comes up are many thoughts, and with that thoughts come a lot of emotions. And so this is really part of the cleaning or the cleansing that happens. And you feel overwhelmed. You also feel overwhelmed with the love and the grace that you must have felt during that time. And you also got a time to interact with Daji, the global guide of heartfulness. And what was really that for you? Because I know lots of people have these very fixed notions around what a spiritual guide should be like. And, I've known him for a few years, and he's anything but that.
Yeah,
But I'd love
he
to
was
get an
really
outside.
chilled out. Like, one is that I think he didn't portray himself to be a guide or a guru, or someone who was above everyone else in that circumstance or that situation. And second is that I didn't feel that he was different. Like, I didn't feel that he had this air about himself or this ego that he carried, and like he was, like, I think you remember this interaction, but it was almost like he was trying to make conversation because he wanted to put me at ease, because he could see that I'm tensed about this interaction that's happening, and I'm finding it very weird to talk to him and ask my questions. But I think he really puts you to ease. And yeah, I think, like, I really enjoyed interacting with him, and I asked him that question about not being able to close my eyes, and that like, I can hear people around me cough, and this sound, and this, like, I don't know how to keep my eyes shut. And one of the things that he said, which in that moment I was like, okay, but then later I processed it and I realized that it had so much meaning, was that what are you going to do if your eyes are open? Like, literally. And I was just like, wow, like, you're a spiritual guide. Is that the piece of advice you're leaving with me? And then
So simple.
yeah, like, how random. But then of course he carried on with it, and he told me that oftentimes when we have our eyes open, or you feel like you can control the environment around you, but you don't need to. In this moment, you don't need to control the environment around you, and the best thing that you can do for yourself is to keep your eyes closed. So keep trying to do it till the time that you get there, which was really meaningful.
Yeah. So simple and yet profound. And
Yeah.
I think it's also very reflective of the heartfulness practice itself, that it's so simple to do and it's so integrative that people almost take it for granted and think if it's so simple, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you felt that as well?
No, I didn't feel like if it's so simple, it's not going to work. But like, I felt like, is there more to it that I haven't experienced yet? Or is this it? Like, because sometimes when you are thinking, because, like, also unfortunately, what books and films do to you is that when you look at what meditation is, you go into the extreme forms. For example, everybody knows what Vipassana is, right? And everybody's first tryst with I'm going to find my inner soul is let's go to Vipassana. And that's great. I'm not like trivializing it in any way. It works for a lot of people. But I was just like, wow, that is really intense. You know, you have to sleep on the floor, you have to be quiet for X number of days, you have to eat meals at certain time and all of that. And here I am like in a festival, eating whatever I wanted to do, waking up when I want, sleeping when I want. So I was just like, I don't think it can be this easy to find yourself. Yeah.
Interesting. And yet you had insights, and yet you had
Yeah.
breakthroughs for yourself, which I'm hearing
Yeah.
you share. And is there anything that you have felt when you've come back that you have noticed, or teams have noticed? I was just talking to Shobit outside, and he's noticed
Yeah.
something about you. But I'd love to know, what if people come up to you and shared with you in terms of, how are you feeling different about yourself after that experience?
Yeah, I think I don't know if everyone is feeling this about me or not, but since, I think it's helped with my anxiety. It's not been as bad as it was before I left and I went there. So I feel like that's an area which has really become better. The second is that um, I'm approaching things a lot more positively. And I think it's a bunch of experiences that all came together that did that to me, including Kanha. So the feeling that I had before going was the feeling of this 30-year-old who's not as successful in her head as she should have been. But now, 1 month later, because it's going to be 1 month since I turned 30, I don't see myself that way. So I think that's been a big learning.
Fantastic. No, because I think it's just so incredible.
Yeah.
There's just so much joy that I'm experiencing when you say this. Even if it's shifted a little bit for you, I think that's what we're looking for, right? It's the small wins, because the big things happen and the big breakthroughs
Yeah.
happen, but it's the small things that keep you motivated to keep meditating and just believing in this journey. So, yeah, I'm extremely happy. I'm just really, really joyful for you. But you said something about even how that anxiety is impacting your leadership team as well at Josh, because now you're less anxious, or you're able to deal with it better. Maybe there's a better version of you showing up. And I love this idea where it's just not about the two founders, that's about Shobit and you, but you've created a whole support structure around you. So help me understand what that looks like. How does really Josh work? Give me like a BTS of Josh. I'd love to do that.
I think Josh has the most opinionated people that you would ever meet in your life. Like, it's very difficult for someone who's not, high intensity, high action, high ownership to survive here. And that's what happens. People who stay, they stay for a very long period of time. But those who don't fit in just don't fit in, because the culture is so intense that like, we have a bias for action. So we don't respect people who come with, like experience and age and skill sets, because none of us have a background in what we are doing. All of us have done like BCom, BBA courses we don't even know. We learned everything on the internet. So for us, everything is about action. Like, what's the outcome that you're bringing to work every single day? And that's how roles are designed. That's how goal sheets get determined. So that's the culture of high output. And consistency with output. It doesn't mean that, if you are a star performer today, you can continue to grow the ranks. You have to keep up. And at no place should complacency kick in because you're a manager now. So managers here execute. So very, very few people are able to survive in this environment, because the tendency is that as you grow in your career and you're at a certain stage, you want to not execute. But a person who has to, lead a particular language or a channel has to themselves be involved in certain scripts and curation calls every single month, so that they can stay in touch with the roots of the organization. We all have to speak to our users weekly, if not monthly, so that we continue to stay rooted to who are we working for at the end of the day. So that's sort of the culture of Josh. But another interesting thing, and I'm going to say this in the words of my colleague, who is no longer my colleague. I mean, she's working at another company now. And she wrote this in a LinkedIn post recently. Her name is Shilpa. And one of the things that she wrote was that at Josh, the culture is of invisible trust. That when you're here, you're a part of something and you share your life with the people who are here, and you just have that bond of trust, and everyone's going to have your back at the end of the day. And I think that's something that we've been able to build as a team, and also carry it through in the people who succeed.
Oh, that's a huge testament to your leadership and you, because I think it takes years for companies to build that sort of trust and build that I would say the ability for people to have each other's backs, because that's what you need when teams need to go out and perform. If I don't know that you're going to be there for me on the other side, maybe I will not put in my 100%. But if I do, I'm going to really extend myself. So I think that's a great testament to your leadership and the culture. I also loved what you said around just staying in touch with your users,
Yeah.
where managerial roles are not just about managing people, but it's also making sure that you're constantly performing and pushing limits. And I mean, I absolutely love that. I also want to understand a little bit more about, when you build companies and when they're very founder led, you get very attached to the company, to the growth of it, to a lot of the things that you owned and ran for many, many years to bring Josh to where it is. But now there's a lot of letting go that you need to that needs to happen for it to take its own path. And how has that been for you? Has it been easy? Has it been really
No,
difficult?
it's not been easy. But I think, it's never easy to like, I don't know if it's sort of like a Virgo trait, but you know how, like, I'm a planner. Like, I want to plan every meal, I want to plan every minute. So when I don't have that control, I go crazy. So and I think people would also testify to that craziness. But I think now I'm becoming better at it, and also because the reality in this entire situation is that I suck at so many things that other people are better at. So if I'm not letting them do it, then like I'm not being true to the goal of the organization. I cannot curate the best stock. I am not the best script writer over here. I am not the best branding expert. I'm not the best person to do user research. There are so many things that I just don't know. And I can't, just because I'm obsessed with the fact that like my identity is attached to this, doesn't mean that I have to create nuisance for everyone else.
Yeah, so you're also hiring really smart people.
Yeah.
And sometimes people who you feel are smarter than you so that they can keep making the organization grow. So what is it that you look for when you're hiring for Josh?
So I think more than skill, I think the biggest driver that we look for is passion. Like how close are you to the mission of the organization, and how badly do you want this mission to succeed? And that learning comes a lot from their background, their bringing, what led them to the place that they are today. So our interviews are not like, like people are like, oh, aren't you going to test my skill now, or should I open an Excel sheet and start screen sharing? And I'm just like, did you not see the meeting invite? It said conversation with Supriya. I did not say interview.
Yeah.
So because it's more about just learning who the person is and why do they want to be here, and what do they want to be in their career. And sometimes it's even like an evaluation of fitment, right? Like I interviewed someone recently and she's currently working in an investment bank, and I was just like, like when you join an investment bank, you would have had very, very different dreams for yourself, and I don't know if this is the place that can give you those dreams. So
Yeah,
I don't know
amazing.
if you should leave it. Like I
Yeah.
genuinely, like, here is what your day is going to look like. These are the problems that you're going to come across. And she's like, no, you don't need to know. I've searched on the internet. I said, no, I will tell you your 9 to 6 and get comfortable with it. If you're comfortable, then come here because I like you. But at the end of this has to be an enabler to your growth, right, in your career. Which is why, like, I feel it I find it very strange when people have grudges against people who leave. And now for me, it's more like, okay, what are people who are leaving doing? Like, are they in a better place? Have they started something of their own? A lot of people who've left Josh started companies that I've invested in, just so that I can stay close to them and, like, see what's happening in their life. And also because I have serious FOMO. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it also means that, you're inspiring them, and the culture here is inspiring them to do better things. That's a great sign of leadership. It's also a great sign of great managers, because the minute you make yourself indispensable, means you're not doing the right job. Like, you should at point become completely dispensable so that other folks can come in and take your role. And that's what you're doing, where you're creating other leaders and an ecosystem around you, who are getting inspired. So you're not only inspiring your listeners, you're also doing that for your own team, which is pretty incredible. I've also seen you be a very strong voice in women leadership. And some of the things that you've shared with me is around that, where what kind of a leader you are. So I want to maybe jump in a little bit around the kind of leadership style that you have, and then also talk through the show that you just recently started called Fir Ziddi. And I saw one of the interviews with a bureaucrat, and she spoke about how when she became an IAS officer, how the whole community and the culture really grew, and changed, and how many more girls now aspire to be like her. I love how you're normalizing ambition in women through this conversation. Do you see that changing a little bit?
Yeah, I think so one is I have a bias for women, and I'm very, very like open about it. I don't give two hoots about, people who call me a feminist on the internet and everything else. And I am a feminist, so I don't have a problem being called that. But there are various versions of that I've been called, and it's completely okay.
I also have a problem with the way people understand feminism today.
Yeah.
It's not about just the typical, bra burning kind of feminism. I don't think we're in that world anymore. I think today we're fighting for our rights. We're also fighting for pay parity. We're just wanting a seat on the right tables. And I think that's really not feminism. That's just saying we want equality, because guess what? It makes a lot of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the thing that I've really been focused on is that, just helping girls not question themselves. So what also happens is, and through the series and interaction, what I've seen a lot of is that there is so much self-doubt. And I am a person who's also gone through the same thing, and I still go through it every day. So my effort is to just like get rid of this doubt. And like when you've got a seat, you worked so hard to be where you are, you can't keep questioning it day in and day out. And then that questioning stops your career progression, because you're just questioning your self-worth again and again. And instead of that, you could use that time and space in your head to maybe acquire a different skill, or like take another path in your career. So that's one of the things that I'm really, really working on, is that through these conversations, can we humanize people who've, become role models for others, other women who have grown to the top in different careers, and also share the most vulnerable situations for them. For example, like even Tanu Jain, if you see the episode where she's talking about this uniform example that she gave, right? That when a girl wears a uniform, it's a movement that you've created, because every single father then says, I want to see my daughter in this uniform. And it changes the entire thinking of that particular area. But every single conversation has left me feeling so like warm and fuzzy, because I've just been like, Diya Mirza, who is like the epitome of beauty, also thinks the same way that I do about a certain thing. And like she also questions the same things. So I've just felt that we as women have a certain DNA. And what really bothers me is that we are not supporting each other as a group. And that's what I want to change through this series. This conversation is just a start of what I want to do, but I really, really want to work on building this community of young aspirational women and connect them to the right role models at the right age, because I felt like that was missing in my journey. I reached out to so many women and nobody responded, and I hate it, and I just like, I despise it so much that I just want to create a world where it never happens for anyone again. And that, we can actually like have conversations where everyone starts becoming more empathetic towards each other, and takes ownership in the fact that if we don't support each other, this is not going to change. Like, this is a conversation that's been happening for decades, right? And we all have these beautiful stats that the GDP is only going to grow if the contribution for women grows. But if you don't support another girl in the room, then it's not going to happen, right?
I absolutely agree. And I'm glad you started this conversation because, like you said, this has been going on for decades. Um, because of what the earlier generation of women leaders did, I think it's been a bit easier for people like you and me to
Yeah.
maybe take that privilege for granted. And now we're in a state where when we actually go out to work and ask for our rights, it's okay. People don't tag us as being aggressive or tag us as, oh my God, she thinks too much of herself. You know, those typical tags that most women got. I think now it's more about the conversation is more around, can I really be. Have equal representation at the board level or at leadership level, and I think you're right, and I love that you're doing this because you are now setting the stage for many other women who are listening to you share these incredible stories, feel like they belong there and they don't need to really have any doubt about why, but it's more about how can they start contributing and moving the needle for others. So, please keep doing what you're doing. I think it's already changing the conversation, at least from what I'm hearing. But are you also feeling like it's changing the conditioning and breaking some of those typical molds in tier 2 tier 3 cities? Because in urban India I know that's changing, but since you have the pulse of the country, so to
Yeah.
say, is it really moving?
Yeah, I think, there are certain things that have happened as a result of this content going up online. So, for example, we had Neha, who you've also had on the podcast, talk about basics of, financial independence for women. Like, how can you actually end up saving and investing your money to not be dependent on someone else? And that generated a lot of conversations. I had a lot of people who reached out to me after that saying that, okay, now I have a plan. Like,
Amazing.
first I had a thought, now I actually genuinely have a plan on where this money is going to go. So I think that was an episode that really, really helped. So I feel like a lot of people who wrote in to me after that were more from tier 1 cities, but they just felt good about themselves. That,
Yeah.
sometimes there are these tags, right? Like, people call you a South Delhi girl, they'll call you a Sobo girl, and like, you are at a leadership position in an organization, they're not calling you by your designation but by where you live. So, which is ridiculous. So I think because we're having such a different, like, mixed bag of conversations, it's creating different impact for different audience sets.
Fantastic. So what's next for Josh? One, and then what's next for Supriya?
So, what's next for Josh is very exciting right now, because I think over the last 8.5 and now almost 9 years of building the organization, we've reached a place where we have massive distribution, 250 million people watching our content every month. We have massive trust amongst our users because they love the content that we put out and the speakers, and they really believe that now is the time that they'll make it big in their careers. Coming on Josh has become an aspiration, so that's also created like a career movement for people. Then मेरे को तो stage पे आना ही आना है, तो मैं तो बन जाऊंगी IAS officer. That's what people are saying and thinking. And फिर मैं rank जब आ जाऊंगी तब मैं आके talk दूंगी. So it's very overwhelming and heartwarming to see this.
I mean, it is
Uh,
it is actually a stamp of you've arrived.
Yeah. No, but it's exciting to see that, because now I think what we're working on next is that how do we take that energy that you have post watching that content to actually help you take the right career decisions, whether it's with respect to coaching, or choosing the right opportunity for you, and eventually even helping you with every area that you make a decision in with respect to your career growth and skilling. That's a space that we want to occupy.
Yeah, no, I love that because I feel like degrees don't make you job ready. I think I've struggled with that a lot through my career where everything looks great on paper and then you have that conversation and you realize they're nowhere close to delivering. So I love what you're doing around skilling because that's what's going to really pay that demographic dividend which we are constantly talking about and harping about because I think that's really going to unlock the value. So that's incredible. And tell me what's next for you.
I don't know what's next for me actually, and I don't think I have. I mean, my reality is Josh's reality, right? That's how glued in I am as a person to what I do. So I don't know, like besides this or apart from this, what I'll be doing, and I think it's okay. Like I'm enjoying what I'm doing. There are areas which I've started to work on now, which I didn't earlier. For example, like I was not someone who would be loud about a cause that I felt deeply about. But this show was a medium for me to be able to express myself and my views, and I'm really enjoying it. Like this is something that I want to continue to build, like the community for women in leadership, and yeah, I'm excited about it.
And I hope we can do many of these meditation sessions, because I really enjoyed it a lot, and I hope it can continue to help you and also help you achieve that best version of yourself that you're aspiring to be, because I think it's always just around the corner.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. I think like it's been a complete, like a roller coaster over the last 30 days from an emotional standpoint, but I think the place that I am in right now is probably the best that I felt in the last year. So I'm very, very excited to see, where I take this energy and this momentum.
But thanks, Supriya, for this incredible conversation. I always get inspired after I have this chat with you. I discover something new about me, and I think for me, just sharing this moment and this 5 days of meditation with you and feeling this joy is what I'm going to leave this conversation with. So thanks again for allowing me this space in your life. I feel extremely privileged.
No, thank you so much. And I think thank you for, like there are some people who need to push you to do certain things, and then in retrospect you're like, thank God that person pushed me to do this, and I think the meditation was the start there, right? So I'm really glad that you were at it and you got me to do something out of my comfort zone, and I learned a lot about myself, so thank you.
Fantastic. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
No, thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.